How's it going, guys? So today I'm back working on the 300ZX. I finished the paint, I've polished it, I've got it in a good place, all the color sanding is done and all of that. So today I want to finish off just a few last little things, like restoring the trim, some of these old faded plastic pieces. These should be pretty easy to do and pretty quick, but I think will make a huge difference making this car look nice. It's kind of like those last few little bits really ties the room together. It really finishes off a restoration. So I'm really excited to finish these last little parts. So let's get to it. All right, so here are the last few things I want to take care of today. So there's a bunch of trim pieces here, which seem to be at one point in time covered in some sort of like rubber or I'm not exactly sure what, but I have some of them taken off from when I painted the car and I left some of them on. So stuff like this guy, this trim here along the top of the door, which is now chrome, but was certainly supposed to be black from the factory. You can still see some of this rubber here hanging on for dear life. So all of this trim around the sort of exterior of the car, I do want to go ahead and hit that with, I'm not sure yet. So I do actually have a piece of trim here, which I'm going to replace this guy with right here. This one seems like it's a little far gone and probably lost its water sealing capabilities a long time ago. So I picked this up at the junkyard a ways back, like months and months back. And this one's actually in pretty good condition. And it gives me a good idea of how these actually were supposed to look like from the factory. And to me, it doesn't look like there's meant to be any texture. So I think I'll go ahead and just hit it with some black paint and go with a non-textured look. The other thing I definitely want to do is remove these mirrors and restore this plastic here. I'm not sure, it kind of seems like maybe this was supposed to be like a very dark gray. I'm going to go ahead and just paint this black. That will definitely be the best way to make this look good. And one other thing, lastly, maybe not lastly, but one other big important thing is to put this seal back in the door. If you remember a few episodes ago, I attempted to peel out that rubber seal that went around the outside of this hatch window, but of course it broke off into many, many pieces. However, I did have luck pulling this off of the orange hatch, that rusty hatch. So I'm glad to see that thing gave its life for a good cause. So I'm just gonna go ahead and glue that back in there. I think that's gonna make a good replacement. There is actually a company that sells these new. They want, I can't remember how much, like 150, 200, whatever. Way too much money for some stupid piece of rubber. So I'm happy to save this guy from one of my hatches. All right, I think that's about it. Let's get started. All right, got some masking off done here, and I got some of this stuff prepped the best I could. This stuff is either peeling off very easily or it's really, really hard to peel off. So I think I'm gonna change my plan a little bit. I think for these top trim pieces, which go basically right here, there's a piece right here, and then there's a small piece right here. For these three, I'm gonna go, or I guess these six on both sides, I'm gonna go ahead and use some undercoating, rubberized sort of stuff, because I think it's gonna be way, way too much work to try and pull off all of this texture. And then for these guys, since these are already smooth and good to go, I'll go ahead and use this trim black, which is definitely the black paint of choice. All right, I think I'll clean this and I'll hit it with some primer first, I think, and then I'll hit it with some black paint. this thing really didn't want to take a coat of paint. It was kind of weird. It definitely was bubbling up there for a second, but after the second coat, it looks a lot better. So I think I'll definitely put on at least a third coat and then it should be good. I guess we'll see. In the meantime, I'm gonna try and do, I think, a coat of that truck bed liner on this guy. And I did sand it down pretty good. Hopefully this stuff will stick a little bit better. All right, so these are my trim pieces that I hit with bed liner. You know, I just am not really happy with how this did not cover up these breaks in the old rubber at all. And another issue I realized too was for some reason the stuff just did not stick. So if you just scratch it lightly, it comes right off that metal. So that was a nice idea, but a totally failed attempt. So I don't really think there's any two ways about it here. I think I'm gonna have to strip these guys all the way down, get all of this annoying old paint or rubber or whatever the stuff was. So I think I'm gonna try and hit this with a wire brush, and I'm gonna use this brass wire brush. Maybe that'll scratch this stuff a little bit less. I feel like that's kind of my only option, so I'm gonna get to this, and hopefully this doesn't take too long to strip off all of this old stuff, and I guess all of the new stuff as well. All right, let's get to it. All right, that actually worked beautifully. That took the stuff right off. Glad I thought of the drill method. So I'm gonna go ahead and knock the rest of these out, and then we'll get to priming and painting, and we'll be done once and for all with these trim pieces. All right, this actually came out pretty good. I don't see any of the scratches, so I think that fill primer actually was a good move there. And these guys seem dry enough. The can said a dry time of 10 minutes, so I think we're ready to hit this with the old trim black. Hopefully it doesn't rain. I think it's gonna rain later today. All right, here we go. So today I want to do kind of one of the last things, but definitely one of the most important things for this restoration. I want to fix this steering wheel. Obviously it's got the classic worn leather or vinyl, whatever this is. And the turn signal switch thing here is broken. So I actually don't have high beams, and it won't automatically reset when I turn. Now I've searched for a new steering wheel for a while, and even ones like mine, which are totally worn, are actually pretty expensive. I have yet to find one that's in good condition, no matter how much you want to spend. I've seen them up to $500. So my plan is to pull the steering wheel off. I'll get a chance to fix all of these little things, and I'm going to attempt to reupholster this thing myself. It's actually not my first time doing this. I did reupholster the Challenger steering wheel and made my own leather version of what's called the Mopar Tough Wheel. And it was very tedious, and it took me quite a while, but it actually came out pretty nice. So I'm gonna give this a try. So the first step, I gotta get this airbag out of here very carefully. I'm gonna make sure to disconnect my battery so it doesn't explode on me. And I'll pull the steering wheel off, and we'll see what we can do for this guy. Ooh, that does not look good. I don't know what I pulled last time, but this thing's pretty toasted. Maybe I can use one of these shorter ones. I guess we got a couple of options here. All right, hopefully one of these shorter ones work. There we go. I was stuck on there. I just realized that I didn't mark where this was. I kind of set it back on there, what I thought was close. Shoot. so the steering wheel isn't going to be straight. All right, well, I think it's pretty close. I did pop out, but I don't think it like shifted much. Cool. All right. Let's get to work on this thing. All right, so I got the sort of like the outer layer pulled off of here. I just went around and carefully cut all the threads out on this, this outer layer, whatever upholstery. The idea here is to retrace this. I bought this piece of leather on Amazon for I think like 15 bucks. As you can see, a little bit too short by about, I don't know, I think I needed like a 30-inch piece and this is a 24 or something like that. So that's not really a big deal. I'm just gonna take this edge here and maybe some of this edge here and extend this guy. So, these marks, the stitching marks will end up right up here or something like that. I guess that's a little bit adjustable, but yeah, pretty excited to get this rewrapped in what's definitely real, like genuine, good leather. So, all right, so I'm gonna retrace this pattern out here and then I'll have two new pieces to stitch together into like a circle and we'll stretch it on this guy and we'll go from there. All right, I got one side done here. Just did a loop through all the way and then back the other way. I used 4 pieces of string here just because I figured it would be 4 times as strong as using 1 piece. So there we go. Got a little, got a cat. Before I turn this into a full circle, I think I'm gonna test it on here, make sure everything's lining up and all of these things are lining up here too. All right, so I got these sections here stitched together to make one circular piece. Everything is lining up okay. Hopefully the leather will stretch a bit when I'm sewing and gluing this thing on. So I think I'll first run a stitch along both edges of the leather here so I can pull them together afterwards with a diagonal stitch. I think that'll make it look pretty close to the factory stitching. All right, after many hours, I finally got this thing ready to stitch up. Not quite stitched up, but ready to anyway. I went ahead and did like a typical stitch like this all the way down and all the way back, all the way around the perimeter of this thing, minus the parts that are gonna be glued to these spokes here on both sides. So you can see it on the top and on the bottom. Yeah, this took a long time. This is very tedious. I think this is one of those things that takes about 5 minutes on a sewing machine. And if you don't have a sewing machine like me, about 5 hours. So I managed to get through pretty much the entire season of the Dropout. So That's my recommendation there, is just to pick a good Netflix series and go after this thing, or buy a sewing machine and do it in 5 minutes. Anyway, it's done now. Now, I'm not 100% sure how these things are going to fit. I'm hoping that they stretch and glue and cover everything. And that was the experience on my Challenger steering wheel. You know, I didn't get the pattern exactly right the first time, but was able to cut excess as I go and stretch parts that weren't quite long enough. So I'm hoping that's the case here, but just in case, I thought it would be a good idea, especially on the back, because I'm just not sure that I cut enough to wrap around here. I'm going to go ahead and paint, or I guess dye, this sort of like ugly greenish, whatever, yellowish color black. That way, if any of this is showing through, it might not look as ugly. I think I'm going to pull this leather off real quick. We'll hit it with this, they call this dye, but really it's like a flexible, you know, like spray paint meant to go on fabric and things. So I'll clean this up and we'll hit it with a couple of coats. And then we can finally start stitching this guy. All right, I got this thing started here, and unfortunately I broke my string a little ways in here, but I tied it off here, and I think if I just start going over and like redo a couple rows, it'll be okay. And it looks pretty good. It's a little wrinkly, but it definitely seems like this thing is just naturally gonna have more material on the inside, I guess, just the way it bunches up. So the idea probably is just to sort of even that stuff out the best you can. Otherwise, this is looking passable. Definitely on the outside, it looks awesome. No wrinkles, because I think it's pretty much pulled tight. I think I'll keep going at this and we'll see where we're at when we finish this top row here. All right, I gotta say this thing's actually looking pretty solid. Obviously I finished off this top part, and I even did one of the small sections here, and it's all coming together pretty good. Definitely has like a little bit of a handmade quality, but I kind of like it actually. And the leather is looking super nice. I'm thinking this is going to match the shift knob and the shift boot perfectly. Cool. I think I'll go ahead and stitch this small section here, and then do the final run, and we can start gluing and figuring out how to finish this guy off. All right, I got this thing all stitched up, finally, after hours and hours and hours of threading. It came out a little bit on the wrinkly side, for sure, but I remember the Challenger steering wheel being a little bit like this, and the Challenger steering wheel was a little bit like this, and you know, maybe after like a couple weeks or a month, it kind of smoothed out, so once it's in the car, it might kind of blend in with the, you know, like the shadows and all of that, but this thing is all set. Got the backs all stitched up, all glued down, looking good. Can't wait to see what this guy looks like in the car. All right, so I know that to tighten up fabric, like when you're doing a headliner or something, a lot of people use like some sort of hot steaming gun thing or whatever. And I thought I'd go ahead and just boil up myself a little tea kettle here and try and use the steam like this to kind of maybe try and steam out some of those wrinkles, and it seems like it's totally working. Actually, I've done a few spots and they're not all gone, but I think they're getting better, so I'll go ahead and do this a little bit more before I install this guy. All right, well, that looks pretty good actually. I It's definitely an improvement, so I think I'll call this one good. Maybe I'll keep an eye out for an original, like perfect condition steering wheel, but I'm definitely not going to spend $500 on one. So I think this is probably pretty good for now. All right, well, I think that's it for this episode. I don't really have much else to do on this thing. You know, there's always going to be like little odds and ends, and certainly a project car is never really finished. But I feel like I definitely have this thing in like a good driver condition, which is good because this thing is my daily driver right now. So I think for the next episode, I'm going to kind of do a comparison of when I first bought this car to what it looks like now. I think that's going to be that'll be a very good therapeutic sort of thing to do. And maybe it's time to start thinking of future plans. Possibly a twin turbo kit, maybe a swap. I guess we'll have to figure that out.